Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So you may have noticed there's a new Mission Impossible movie out, the sixth movie to be exact, Fallout. Quite staggering to think that this series has now spanned 22 years and has encompassed lots and lots of different directors, different styles, different storylines. Of course, all underpinned by the presence of Tom Cruise, who has approval over who makes these movies. So you started off with Brian De Palma, with a very sort of paranoid, sort of strange, disorienting atmosphere. Then you go into the slow mo, jumping through the air with a pair of pistols while a pair of doves flies past the approach of John Woo. Then you go into the sort of more saturated sort of lens flare aesthetic of J.J. Abrams in the third movie. Then Ghost Protocol, the fourth movie, you have Brad Bird taking over. He had a very playful sensibility where he treated live action in the same way that he did his Pixar movies, The Incredibles and Ratatouille. And then in the fifth movie, Rogue Nation, you had Christopher McQuarrie took over, and who now becomes the first director to helm more than one film in the series. He's now back in Fallout, and interestingly as well, this also shakes up the formula in that this is the first movie in the series to really explicitly pick up from one before. And not only that, it also acknowledges certain other events in the other series, in the earlier films as well, namely the third movie, but I'll get back to that. So it's an interesting thing that obviously nowadays what you get is there are a lot of blockbuster franchise tentpole movies all competing for our attention, none more so than the dominance of the superhero genre at the moment. Obviously Marvel have really cornered the market in this with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and there's a lot more competition for our attention than you had when, for example, the very first Mission Impossible came out way back in 1996, and the constant question that a lot of filmmakers and stars have to confront in these franchises with which they're associated is, what is the relevance of this? Why does this franchise still exist? How is it continuing to justify itself in an increasingly crowded marketplace? And I have to say, I think Fallout does that very well for a number of different reasons. I mean, the plot is a bit of a headache to try and sum up. I mean, in that sense, I think it's actually quite interesting. It owes more to the Brian De Palma movie, in which the plot was this sort of overcooked stew of double, treble, and even quadruple crosses in a lot of places. It actually owes quite a lot to that. I think that's a nice way of linking back to the heritage of the De Palma one, which I actually think is still somewhat underrated in the wider scheme of things. But the basic gist of it is, in the wake of Rogue Nation, in which the anarchist syndicate leader Solomon Lane, brilliantly played by the creepy Sean Harris, was captured by the then disavowed IMF, headed up by Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt. You now pick up with a new threat, which is that basically out of the remains of the syndicate, you now have a splinter group called the Apostles that are looking to basically make a nuclear arms trade with this mysterious figure called John Lark. And of course it falls to Ethan Hunt and his team to basically find this person, to expose him and to stop the plutonium from falling into the wrong hands. I've just basically boiled the plot down to its simplest form, because the plot is not that simple. There is an awful lot of tangential, crisscrossing sort of betrayal, espionage stuff going on. I won't even attempt to get into that, partly because it's complicated enough to sum up, but also because I don't want to spoil the fun, because that is actually part of the fun of the movie, trying to guess whose allegiances lie with who and so on. Suffice it to say that in this one, Hunt not only has his own team, but he is, against his will, forced to pair up with August Walker, who's a CIA agent, played by mustachioed Henry Cavill, who is forced on the IMF team by Angela Bassett's sort of steely CIA superior. She says, you use a scalpel, I use a hammer. Therefore, it's important that Hunt and Walker learn to work together. And their mission, should they choose to accept it, and they do, ranges from Paris to London to the mountains of Kashmir, and not only takes in this vast sort of globe-trotting espionage plot that gets more and more complex and knotty as the film goes on, but also, I have to say, some of the most extraordinary action set pieces that I think I've ever seen in a movie, not just in recent years, but I've ever seen in a movie. There are some really impressive scenes on display here, and no doubt you've read a lot about them. I mean, for example, the Halo high altitude, low opening skydive jump that Tom Cruise did and had to do 106 times. Apparently they could only do it once a day because they needed to ensure that the weather conditions and the lighting was perfect. that is an extraordinary achievement in and of itself, and that occurs fairly early on, and I could feel my heart in my throat watching that, and from there it only gets better. You have a scrap in a Parisian bathroom, which clearly implies that Christopher McQuarrie and his stunt team have been watching the likes of The Raid, both the Raid films. You have not one but two vehicular chase sequences in Paris where Rob Hardy's brilliant camera work sort of weaves in and out of the traffic. I'd say shout out to Rob Hardy, who is rapidly becoming one of the best cinematographers in the business. He's worked a lot with Alex Garland. He worked with him on Ex Machina and Annihilation and turned those movies into really sleek, shimmering works of art. And he does very much the same thing here. And I think he and Christopher McQuarrie do, and in combination with the editing as well, the pace of the editing is really important here. You actually get a real sense of the space in which all of these extraordinary sequences are laid out. You get a sense of how things have been blocked and staged, and you really get a sense of how complicated these sequences are, and yet the real skill is that they feel naturalistic, and you can also see them as well. This isn't a hideous Michael Bay experience where everything is edited to within an inch of its life, and whether you doubt whether they actually captured much footage on set because it's been so badly edited. Here you can quite clearly see the craft on display, and it is a real craft in the extraordinary stunts in this movie. And I think the climactic helicopter on helicopter battle that's been teased in the trailer is absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, a lot's been reported about how Tom Cruise actually learned to fly a helicopter for that sequence, and when you're in the cockpit with him, I defy you not to grab onto your seat. It's some of the most visceral action cinema I've seen in a long time, and if ever there was a case for this collective stunt team on a movie deserving an Oscar, this is it, because this is phenomenally complex work. It's almost like a musical. It's like a symphony of mayhem, and everything just escalates up and up and up, and things generally get crazier, particularly in that last 40 minutes in that aforementioned helicopter sequence. Everything escalates. And I think also this is part of the reason why the film works. I think in the Mission Impossible movies, it's tempting to just see them as a series of interconnected set pieces with not a lot going on between them. What this one actually attempts to do, it actually picks apart the iconography of Ethan Hunt's character in it, and it makes him more fallible. He makes a lot more mistakes in this one, both physical and emotional. And I think what that shows is there's a greater sense of maturity in the series, and also in the way that Tom Cruise is aware of his own iconography, because Tom Cruise has clearly got to the stage in his career now where he's 56. He must be thinking, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this for very much longer. There's now talk that there might be a 7th movie on the way, given the critical response that this one has received. It's had glowing reviews and it's done extraordinarily well at the box office. Don't rule it out. But clearly Tom Cruise can't do this for very much longer. He bashed his ankle in while jumping over London rooftops in this, but age is obviously going to catch up with him. And I think there's a newfound maturity outside of the stunts, which is how do we pick apart the relevance of the Ethan Hunt character? How do we make a case for him being relevant? And there's a subtextual thing going on, which is basically Tom Cruise. It seems to be Tom Cruise confronting his own mortality, and that is kind of there, and that's mined for quite a lot of sort of dry humour, because Tom Cruise is synonymous with this franchise, and Tom Cruise is. I mean, it's not clear whether when you're watching Ethan Hunt, are you watching Ethan Hunt or are you watching Tom Cruise? I mean, someone has argued that Ethan Hunt is basically an extension of Cruise's persona, in which case, when you watch the film, you often forget you're watching a character. You often think you are just watching Tom Cruise using real-world locations as a playground for these extraordinary stunts that he insists on doing himself. So consequently, what you get is a very smart unpicking. Via the unpicking of the character, you also get an unpicking of Tom Cruise as a person, and you get a sense that he is reaching this maturity now where he is coming to terms with his age and with how much longer he's going to do this. And that gives the movie a nice sort of, like I said, wry humour, and it also gives it more of a substantial dramatic impetus. No longer do you get the feeling, as with the early Mission Impossible movies, that these are it's just set piece, with the interconnecting bits being a little bit dull. There actually do feel there are dramatic stakes in this. Not only because you see an increasingly older Tom Cruise risking life, and then because Hunt has to understand that there are reprisals to what he does, and this manifests in the return of his wife, played by Michelle Monaghan, who previously appeared in the 3rd movie and then made a cameo in Ghost Protocol. I won't reveal the context of that, but it's a really nice threading together of everything, and it's basically about how this movie feels like a culmination of everything that's come before. So it actually feels like a proper dramatic experience. It's not just an excuse for a bit of daring do. There is actually a real sense of sort of dramatic weight going on here, if that doesn't sound too pretentious. So you can go in for that, or you can go in for the extraordinary set pieces that really, hit the ground running right from the very start, and really only gather in intensity as they go on. I think the supporting performances are great. I think Henry Cavill, overcomes the moustache to emerge as this sort of enigmatic character with whom Hunt engages in fractious chemistry. I have to say, I really like the fact that this movie actually gave Ving Rhames a lot more to do, because I think Ving Rhames has been very, very underutilised in the fourth or fifth one. I mean, he barely appeared in the fourth one. He only appeared at the very end of that for about 30 seconds. This movie actually gives him some of the best exposition scenes that sort of fill out Hunt's background, really, because obviously he's the character who's been Luther Stickle, Ving Rhames' character, is the one who's been with Hunt right from the very, very first movie back in 1906. That was good. You got Simon Pegg brilliantly doing comic relief. You have the presence of Rebecca Ferguson again, who does that really, really good thing of like, which side is she on? She's quite unreadable and enigmatic, which is exactly what you want in a spy espionage movie. You have Vanessa Kirby as the White Widow, who's this arms dealer who ends up becoming embroiled in everything that's going on. She's terrific. Anyone who's seen The Crown will know how good she is, and she fits in really well in the environment of this. She's really stylish and poised and really well done. But the real achievement, I'd say, resides with Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise in the fact that they have made a really, really good case as to why we need this character, why we need the IMF, and they make a good case as to why the Mission Impossible movies are important. I mean, this is a rare series that's actually got better as it's gone on, and it called to mind the scene in Skyfall where Judi Dench reads the Tennyson out at the inquiry and basically makes a case as to why MI6 is needed in an increasingly opaque world. And I kind of feel that now there's something pleasingly old-fashioned about a character like Ethan Hunt, who is willing to risk life and limb to save the day. And there's also something very pleasingly old-fashioned about a star like Tom Cruise, who does his own stunts. I mean, there's no CGI. I mean, obviously there will be CGIing out of like harnesses and everything, but Tom Cruise is doing this stuff. He is so committed to giving the audience a good time. And I like Tom Cruise as an actor, not just as a stuntman. But that's really, really admirable and is not to be underestimated. I mean, he is his own best kind of special effect. And honestly, go and watch this movie because it's breathtaking. It is too long. The plot gets way too convoluted for its own good, but the emotional undercurrent of it, which is that it's Hunt facing his own weaknesses and how those weaknesses can have global and personal ramifications, kind of makes sense. Even if you lose the thread of the main storyline, that still makes sense. And the action sequences are astonishing, and I think this is going to be seen as a benchmark in that. And honestly, give the stunt guys on this team an Oscar, and full credit to Christopher McQuarrie for marshalling the extraordinary scale of this production, because it's really, really impressive. It's Mission Impossible Fallout. It's out now. Go and see it and drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner, and I'll see you soon. Bye.